Today we will review the URA Claim for Temporary Relocation Expenses Form, HUD 40030, which is one of HUD's required documents for voluntary buyout or acquisition programs that have displaced tenants, therefore triggering the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Act, or URA, requirements. A hyperlink to HUD's URA Claim for Temporary Relocation Expenses Residential Moves form can be found on the Texas General Land Office website at recovery.texas.gov. To locate the document, go to the Local Buyout and Acquisition Program page, which is linked below in the description section of this video. Scroll down to the right side checklist section and click on the URA Claim for Temporary Relocation Expenses form link. Once you click on the link, you will be directed to the document on HUD's website. Download the document. Please note you will need a PDF reader such as Adobe Acrobat to view and edit the document. This claim form is for the use of tenants of voluntary or involuntary buyout and acquisition programs and homeowners in involuntary programs applying for reimbursement of actual and reasonable moving costs and related expenses in connection with their move to a temporary housing unit. For this video, we will use an example of a fictional tenant and location to give a sample of how to complete the form. Now let us begin to review each section of the Claim for Temporary Relocation Expenses Residential Moves form. Once opened in a PDF reader, you will be able to enter and edit data onto the document. For the purposes of this video and form, all tenants and involuntary acquisition homeowners that will be completing the form are known as claimants. The form is completed in a phased approach. First, the claimant enters all information and provides backup documentation. Subrecipients should provide assistance as needed to the claimant to complete the form. Then in the second phase, the subrecipient confirms the information and determines the eligible amount. In cell 1A, the claimant should enter their name and their current mailing address. Next, in cell 1B, the claimant should enter their telephone number or numbers. Then in cell 2A, the claimant should indicate yes or no if all members of the household moved into the same dwelling. If no, list the names of all members and the addresses to which they moved into the remarks section, found at the end of this page. Next, in cell 2B, the claimant should indicate yes or no if they do or will receive a federal, state, or local housing program subsidy at the dwelling they moved to. Next, cells 3, 4, and 5 are for information regarding claimants' previous and current addresses. In cell 3, enter the address of the unit the claimant is being temporarily displaced from and enter the date of that move out in the last cell on this row. In cell 4, enter the address of the unit the claimant is temporarily being moved to. Also enter the date the claimant rented the unit and the date the claimant moved into and then out of the unit. In cell 5, enter the address of the unit the claimant has returned to permanently. Enter the date the claimant moved into this unit and the date they rented the unit. Next is cell 6, Certification of Legal Residency in the United States. To qualify for relocation payments, the claimant must be a United States citizen or national, or an alien lawfully present in the United States. The claimant will sign to certify that they are certifying their legal residency in the United States. The certification in cell 6 must be completed in order to receive any relocation assistance. In order to certify, the claimant will sign the completed form. Claimants should see 49 CFR 24.208 G and H for hardship exceptions to the legal residency requirement. In number 6, the claimant will select only one category: 1. Individual, or 2. Family. If individual, the individual should select whether they are a citizen or an alien lawfully present in the United States. If family, the claimant will enter the number of persons in the household, how many are citizens or nationals, and how many are aliens lawfully present in the United States. In our example, Sam Smith lives with his son, so there are 2 persons in the household and both people are U.S. citizens. Then number 7 is for the determination of claimants' moving expenses to their temporary unit. Claimants may be eligible for reimbursement of actual and reasonable moving costs and related expenses in connection with their move to a temporary housing unit. They should complete the computation table in number 7 to compute their payment. The computation table includes 2 columns for actual costs incurred. Actual costs for 1. Commercial move, and 2. Self-move. For our example, the claimants used a commercial company to move, so they input their costs in the commercial move column. First, cells 7A through 7E will be filled in by the claimant with their actual costs incurred for temporary moving. 7A through 7D provide common examples of temporary relocation costs that can be incurred. Other costs can be claimed in 7E, and they will need to be explained in the remarks section at the bottom of the page. Then in 7F, the claimant should put the total of lines 7A through 7E. If the claimant previously received any money for temporary relocation, they should input that amount into 7G. Then in 7H, they should subtract line 7G from line 7F for their total amount requested. For our example, the claimant had $550 in moving expenses and had previously received $100, so their total amount requested was $450. Cells 7J through 7N are to be completed by the subrecipient during the review phase upon receiving the completed form. The last cell on page 1 is for remarks. Here, claimants should include all comments and remarks for the information presented. Claimants can attach additional sheets if necessary. The next section is number 8, determination of claimants' moving expenses to their permanent unit. Claimants may be eligible for reimbursement of actual and reasonable moving costs and related expenses in connection with their move from the temporary housing unit to the permanent unit. This section will be completed the same way as number 7, but for actual costs to the permanent unit. The computation table includes 2 columns for actual costs incurred. Actual costs for 1. Commercial move, and 2. Self-move. For our example, the claimants used a commercial company to move, so they input their costs into the commercial move column. First, cells 8A through 8D will be filled in by the claimant with their actual costs incurred for moving to the permanent unit. 8A through 8C provide common examples of temporary relocation costs that can be incurred. Other costs can be claimed in 8D, and they will need to be explained in the remarks section at the bottom of the page. Then in line 8E, the claimant should put the total of lines 8A through 8D. If the claimant previously received any money for temporary relocation, they should input that amount into 8F. Then in 8G, they should subtract line 8F from line 8E for their total amount requested. For our example, the claimant had $650 in moving expenses and had previously received $0, so their total amount requested was $650. Cells 8I through 8M are to be completed by the subrecipient during the review phase upon receiving the completed form. At the bottom of cell 8 is a cell to input any remarks for the cost being claimed in number 8. Next, in number 9, the claimant should input monthly out-of-pocket costs for temporary relocation. First, the claimant will enter the month, day, and year from the beginning to the ending periods of the claimant's temporary relocation, and enter the total number of months the claimant was relocated. Then the claimant should complete the determination of rent and average monthly utility costs table to compute payment for rent and utility costs that surpass what the claimant would have paid at their permanent dwelling that they are being temporarily displaced from. Claimants should input their monthly temporary relocation costs for rows A through I. If claimants are temporarily relocated more than 1 month, as can be seen in the total number of months listed above, they can either complete and attach an additional continuation form for each additional month, or they can enter the total claimed like 9P and explain the additional amount in detail in the remarks section. For each row in the table, the claimant should input actual rent and utility costs that they incurred in the unit they moved from and the unit they moved to. In cell 9A, the claimant should enter the monthly rental amount due according to the rental contract and the terms and conditions of occupancy for both the unit moving from and the unit that they moved to temporarily. Then the claimant should indicate for both the unit that they moved from and the unit that they moved to if all utilities were included in the monthly rental amount. If all utilities were not included in both units, 9B through 9F must be completed. In lines 9B through 9F, if certain utilities were included in the monthly rental amount, claimants should place IMR for in-monthly rent in the applicable cell for that utility. All utility costs that were paid separate should be noted by the price of their monthly unit cost. Note, applicants should ensure they are inputting all utility services they pay for. You can see in our example how the claimant input their rental and utility costs for both the unit they moved from and the unit they moved to temporarily. At their previous unit, gas was included in the monthly rent, so they input IMR in the cell. And in the unit they moved to, they had no gas, so they input NA. In line G, the applicant should add their costs from lines A through F. Then in line H, applicants should input any housing subsidies received. In line I, the applicant will subtract line 9H from line 9G and will input the month that the costs are being claimed for. Lines J through M are for claimants to input other reasonable out-of-pocket expenses to request a claim. In the first row, the claimant should input the month and year for the claim. Then in line J, claimants can request per diem if there are no cooking facilities at their temporary residence. They should include the amount per adult and number of days in the month, and the amount per child and the number of days in the month. Then input the total in the claimant row. Lines K through M are for other costs such as increased transportation costs, boarding for pets, parking, etc. These items should be listed individually. In our example, the applicant had a dog they could not bring with them to the temporary residence and they had to board. They input their $200 a month boarding fee in K. Finally, in row 9N, claimants should sum lines 9J through 9M. The summary section of number 9 will be completed by the subrecipient during their review. Then in the remarks section, claimants and subrecipients can input remarks or comments on any of the amounts claimed in number 9. You can see in the remarks section that because the applicant was temporarily relocated for more than 1 month, they multiplied the monthly amount claimed from lines 9I and 9N by the number of months they were relocated for to get the total amount claimed for out-of-pocket costs. In addition, in this section they explained the NA that was in the gas utility row for the unit they moved into. Finally, The last section on the form is the certification of claimants. Applicants should sign and date that they are certifying that the claim and supporting information is true and complete, and that they have not been paid for these expenses. Applicants will also request that the amounts in lines 7N, 8M, and 9R are paid to the applicant or to a contractor. After receiving the claim form from the claimant, the subrecipient should use the form to complete the agency sections and determine the eligible reimbursement amounts. Beginning with the first 3 cells where it says for agency use only, subrecipients should enter the subrecipient name in the name of agency cell, the GLO contract number in the project name or number cell, and the Tiger project number assigned when the applicant is input into Tiger in the case number cell. Subrecipients should review the information in numbers 1A through 6 to ensure they are consistent with the other information that the subrecipient has on the claimant, and they are consistent with the temporary relocation claims being requested. In number 7A through I, the subrecipient should input in the agency use only columns their approved amount for each claim based off the receipts and documentation provided by the claimant. As you can see in the example, the claimant only had receipts for $49 for cable and internet reconnection, and the subrecipient determined they were only eligible for $449. Then the to be completed by agency section of number 7 will compare the amounts claimed by the claimant with the amounts recommended by the subrecipient. In 7J, the subrecipient will input the amount claimed and recommended for 7I for column number 1 for commercial moves. In 7K, the subrecipient will input the amount claimed and recommended for 7I for column number 2 for self moves. In line 7L, the subrecipient will total line 7J and 7K. Upon payment, the subrecipient will input the amount recommended and the amount approved for payment, and the signature of the responsible party for the subrecipient, their printed name, and the date of their recommendation or approval. Once paid, the subrecipient should input the date the subrecipient paid the claim and who it was made to. In number 8, subrecipients should review the claims to move to the permanent unit the same as they did for the temporary unit. In 8A through 8F, the subrecipient should input in the agency use columns the amount they found eligible based on the documentation provided. In 8H, the subrecipient will total the amount approved based on their review. Then the to be completed by agency section of number 8 will compare the amounts claimed by the claimant with the amount recommended by the subrecipient. In 8I, the subrecipient will input the amount claimed and recommended for 8H for column number 1 for commercial moves. In 8J, the subrecipient will input the amount claimed and recommended for 8H for column number 2 for self moves. In line 8K, the subrecipient will total line 8I and 8J. Upon approval of payment, the subrecipient will input the amount recommended and amount approved for payment, and the signature of the responsible party for the subrecipient, their printed name, and the date of their recommendation or approval. Once paid, the subrecipient should input the date the subrecipient paid the claim and who it was made to. In number 9, subrecipients should complete the for agency use only and to be provided by agency columns. In rows 9A through I, in columns 2 and 4, the subrecipient should input the eligible amount based on the documentation provided by the claimant. Then in column 5, the subrecipient should calculate the increase in monthly costs based on the difference in the for agency use only columns for the unit the claimant moved to, column 4, and the unit the claimant moved from, column 2. In column 6, the subrecipient should input the approved amount for reimbursement for each item. In 9J through N, subrecipients should input the eligible amounts for other reasonable out-of-pocket expenses based off the documentation provided. In the To Be Completed by Agency section for the summary of monthly out-of-pocket costs for temporary relocation, subrecipients should summarize and compare the amounts claimed by the claimant with the amounts recommended for reimbursement. In 9O, subrecipients should add line 9I and 9N. For the amount claimed, subrecipients should input the difference in columns 1 and 3 for 9I and add column 1 for 9N. For our example, the claimant claimed $1,895 for monthly costs for the temporary residence and $1,218 for the unit they moved from, with a difference of $677 plus the $200 they claimed in N column 1 equals the $877 placed in 9O for amount claimed. For the amount recommended, add 9L, column 6, and 9N for column 2. For our example, the subrecipient recommended $175 for rent and monthly utility costs and $200 out-of-pocket expenses, with a total of $375. Then in 9P, the subrecipient will input the number of months of temporary relocation and multiply that by the amount claimed or recommended above. Or, alternately, they can enter the total amount from all the continuation sheets on line 10I, column 6, and 10N, column 2. For our example, we said they used the temporary housing for 2 months, and therefore the amount claimed is $877 times 2, which is $1,754. The amount requested is $375 times 2 months, which is $750. In rows R and S, the subrecipient should input the amount recommended and approved and the name, signature, and date of the recommendation or approval. Subrecipients should then ensure that the claim form was signed by the claimant. Finally, the subrecipient should provide their determination of the eligible amounts to the claimant. If the full amount of the claimant's claim is not approved, the subrecipient should provide a written explanation for the reason and explain to the claimant how they can appeal the determination if desired. We hope you enjoyed this training on the URA Claim for Temporary Relocation Expenses form. If there are any additional questions during the completion of the form, subrecipients should reach out to their General Land Office Grant Manager. Additional videos covering the other required local buyout and acquisition forms are or will soon be available at the same location you are viewing this one.